Welcome to episode 388, where I'm speaking with Dr. John Douillard about his bestseller, Eat Wheat. We talk about the fear around wheat and gluten today and some of the common misconceptions. Dr. John shares research that connects wheat with the brain's lymphatic system, along with giving lots of tips and advice on how to reintroduce wheat into your diet safely and mindfully. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm very happy to welcome Dr. John Douillard, who is a globally recognized Ayurvedic and sports medicine educator with 40 years of experience. He is the host of Ayurveda Meets Modern Science podcast and author of 7 health books, including bestsellers Eat Wheat and The 3-Season Diet. In his mission to provide free Ayurvedic knowledge to the public, he created lifespa.com, where he connects ancient Ayurvedic wisdom with modern science. Dr. John, it's a pleasure. I'm a longtime fan. I have really benefited from all your education you've put out over the years, so it's an absolute honor to speak with you today.
Well, Colette, it's good to be here, and thanks so much for having me.
And we're going to talk about, rethinking gluten through an Ayurvedic lens. There's a lot of talk about gluten these days. And as I mentioned in your bio, you have wrote the bestseller, Eat Wheat. Can you share what inspired you to write Eat Wheat and explore this topic in depth?
When I first got into practice in 1984, we took people off of wheat and we took people off of dairy. And we gave them probiotics, and we gave them digestive enzymes, and they would get better. But it wasn't like they got completely better. They'd come back months later, 6 months later, and the problems would come back, or another problem would come. That we were just sort of kicking the can down the road by not actually addressing the underlying problem. And then that was 1984, and in 1986 I went to India for just a vacation to try to see if I could study Ayurveda and just dabble a little bit. I got invited to stay there, ended up staying there for about a year and a half studying Ayurveda. And I was sort of blown away by a couple of things. One, that they cared for the gut in such a kind and gentle way, and that the digestive system was such a critical piece of the whole health longevity puzzle. And so it became really clear to me that what we do here in the West, either we kill all the bugs with antibiotics or we clobber the gut with anticidal herbal agents that are highly extracted and concentrated that don't really understand the delicacy of the intestinal environment. I remember I tried to make kefir one point, which is your own, making kefir. And I couldn't do it. It was so hard to create everything just right so that the bugs would actually form. And it just was such a kind of wake-up call for me to realize just how delicate and precise the environment has to be for the gut to actually heal and for the good bugs to proliferate. There was a really interesting, I was writing an article just last week about the 2007 microbiome project, which was the first big project from the NIH about the microbiome. And they actually gave us 2 warnings. And they said that the first warning was, don't wash and sterilize everything so much, that we have an issue with what's called microbial diversity. We don't have enough different kinds of bugs and species in our gut. And there was a study done it was a Stanford study, and they took mummy poop from museums in Utah and Arizona, and they found, actually I think it was New Mexico and Arizona, and they figured out a way to actually measure the poo of these 1,000-year-old mummies, and they found that the diversity in those ancient poo, the ancient microbiome, was so diverse compared to the modern humans that they called what we have today an extinction event, the lack of microbial diversity. So that was the first warning that the 2007 Microbiome Project gave us was, we got to expose ourselves to more bugs and more diversity, eat more ethnic foods, and even though in the last 30 years, the diversity of the food on the planet that's being fed around the world has been reduced by 50%. So there goes 50% of the unique, diverse microbes in the gut, right? So that's bad. And the second thing, what I thought was really amazing, was they said that the Microbiome Project warning was that there's something called a horizontal transfer of genetic material, which just sounds complicated, but what it means is like my wife and I have 6 children, so we transferred our genetic material vertically to them. So that's how we humans do it. But there's something called a horizontal transfer, which means you ingest a virus, and that virus goes into your intestinal tract or respiratory tract. And it doesn't have the genetic material to actually penetrate the skin or the lining of your gut and infect you. But one of the bacteria in your gut do. So the virus can actually borrow the genetic material from that bacteria and horizontally transfer that genetic material into the virus. And in short order, that virus is going to figure out how to penetrate your gut. Now it has the genetic material to do that, and it's going to infect you. And that's called the horizontal transfer of genetic material. And what they said was that it was most prominent with exposure to farm animals and animals. That's how we get the bugs that like to do that. And the second one, like the bird flu, which is a big thing here in the States. And the second one was it wasn't based on proximity. So it wasn't just that the virus happened to be next to a bacteria that just happened to have that genetic material that it needed to infect you. It was based on ecology. It was based on the environment of the gut. And that's my point, is that we in the West have no clue really until recently that the environment is such a critical piece of the puzzle. And that was what the Microbiome Project told us. We have to heal the environment. Now, when you go back thousands of years and you look at in Ayurveda, they talked about something called krimi. They talked about visible and invisible bacteria. And the invisible ones, they said, could be good for you or bad for you. But you don't want to go killing things. They said you have to change the environment, change the host. So this is a concept that's been around for thousands of years. We are still just beginning to get that memo. But the idea is that it's the intestinal microbiology that's so critically important. Okay, so what does that have to do with wheat, and how did I get into that? Well, first of all, giving, digestive enzymes does the job for you. Giving them a probiotic, you have to take it for the rest of your life, which makes no sense. I mean, our ancient ancestors, 1,000-year-old mummies, they didn't, take probiotics, that they had such greater health than we do today. So what happens is that when we bubble wrap our diet and we take certain foods out of our diet, like wheat or dairy or nuts or seeds or grains or lectins or phytic acids or nitrates or goitrogens, all these foods that are harder to digest. And I get it. There's glyphosate, there's pesticides, there's issues, there's processing. I'm well aware of all that. But if you just take actual wheat without all that processing, there's literally nothing wrong with it. What's really wrong is our ability to digest harder to digest things, which I experienced back in 1984 when I got into practice, and I would take people off of wheat and dairy and they would get better, but the problem would come back. I'd put them on digestive enzymes. I'm giving them a crutch. I put them on a probiotic. They got to take it forever. It was wrong for me to do that with my patients. And when I came back from India, I realized that it was really all about repairing and restoring the environment and the digestive strength. And when you bubble wrap the diet, what happens, studies show that when they take people who eat wheat compared to people who are gluten-free but don't have to be, they don't have celiac, that the people who eat wheat have 4 times less mercury in their blood than people who are gluten-free but don't have to be. They have significantly more good bugs, less bad bugs, and significantly more killer T cells compared to the people who are gluten-free but don't have to be. 2 big Harvard studies, over 100,000 people in each of those studies, showed that the people who ate the most wheat, the most grain, had significantly less diabetes and less Alzheimer's and less heart disease. So the studies were like, wait a minute. We're hearing all this stuff about the grain brain, that the grain is creating problems with your brain. And I I debated David Perlmutter. He came on my podcast, I came on his podcast, and my mother told me that I won both of those podcasts. So
it was a great debate.
According to my mom, we nailed it.
Mom knows best.
Exactly. So anyway, the point is that there's more to the story than just that wheat spat, and that taking something out of the diet like that can actually create real problems, which we'll get into in more detail, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was this journey that you went on from 1984 in your practice, removing what was, thought of as the problem foods, and then realizing on your journey to India and discovering Ayurveda in that process that, wait, now it's the environment, it's not actually the food. And there's a lot of fear around wheat and gluten today. And it's become almost trendy, right? To be gluten-free. We see so many ultra-processed foods with gluten-free on the label nowadays. What are some of the common misconceptions about wheat from both a Western and an Ayurvedic perspective?
Well, I think that it's important to know that of course, the environment matters, but what creates the environment? That's what we're really talking about. Mm-hmm. And that environment is created by digestive strength. There's a coordinated effort of your stomach making acid, your liver making bile, and your pancreas and duodenal enzymes creating the enzymes to create this coordinated effort to let the food be completely digested. And I'll quote you a study that was done about this whole thing. And they said that if you don't digest your food, your gluten, the way that you should, the proteins or the fats. Now we're talking about proteins that are hard to digest, like all the anti-nutrients on beans, on grains, on, all types of plant foods. They are harder to digest because the plants produce these chemicals to ward off predators. So the other bugs don't eat them. If you eat meat, which we think of the macho man diet, right? You eat a carnivore diet, you got to be some tough kind of a guy. There are no anti-nutrients on a carnivore diet. It's the easiest digestive diet to digest for us. If you want a macho man diet, be a vegetarian. Eating those vegetables, which have anti-nutrients, which are protective chemicals, which are very hard for us to digest, including specific proteins called anti-nutrients, and hard to digest proteins like gluten and casein, you need a robust digestive system to really make that happen. So what's happened, and the studies show that if you don't break down the proteins well, or the fats, and here in America, the EPA reports about 70 million tons of toxic chemicals, all of which are fat soluble, that are dumped in our atmosphere every year. That filters down on the air we breathe, water we drink, food we eat. So even if it's organic, there's going to be mercury lacing those foods. You can't get rid of it. So we have to digest those. And our digestive strength is directly linked to our ability to detoxify. So if you don't have good digestive strength and you go, boy, I don't eat wheat, I feel bad. I don't eat gluten, I feel bad. I don't eat. And I feel better when I take these foods out of my diet. Fine, take the foods out of your diet. But you haven't solved the problem. All you've done is taken the things that are irritating you out of your diet. Which means that you're not able not only to digest those foods, you're not able to detoxify the environmental pollutants and all the chemicals we're exposed to on this modern planet that we have. So that's one thing. Just bubble wrapping the diet is kind of just kicking the can down the road. The same thing I did when I was in my practice early on. I saw that I wasn't really helping these folks get well, right? And then finally, 30 years later, modern medicine all of a sudden starts saying, medical doctors saying, yeah, wheat's bad, wheat's really bad. I'm going like, people that were in the natural medical field way back when, we knew this a long time ago. It wasn't just the wheat. It wasn't just the dairy. There's something else going on. And now we have people who can't eat rice and beans. I mean, half the planet lives on rice and beans. We can't eat nuts anymore. Beans, which are the main food of the centenarians who live the longest on the planet, that's the main staple of their diet is beans, and we can't digest them. I mean, something really went wrong. So yes, if you eat a food and you feel bad, sure, stop eating it. But now let's troubleshoot the underlying digestive weak links. So that back to that study, that study showed that if you don't digest your proteins and your fats well, environmental pollutants, gluten, dairy, all that, they will go incompletely digested into your intestinal tract. And they will be too big as a molecule to get into your blood and nourish you and feed you. So your brain will go, I'm hungry still, right? Keep asking for more food, usually sugar and quick, injectables, I call them, right? But the problem is that when you eat those foods and they go into your intestinal tract and they're too big to get into your blood, they get uptaken into the collecting ducts of your lymphatic system, called your lacteals. And that's the garbage can of your intestinal tract. Now, I wish the garbage can was just the toilet, but it's not. The garbage can is the collecting ducts of your lymph. It sucks up the protein and the fats that aren't properly broken down to go into an immune system, which your lymph system carries your immune system. It's taking out the trash. And it's also trying to deliver fat as energy to every cell of your body. So when those undigested proteins and fats get uptaken into the lymph, they will congest your lymph. And the studies show they'll cause extra weight around your belly and hips. They'll get into the skin-associated lymphatic tissue and cause your skin to break out and give you a rash or hives and go, oh, God, I'm allergic to that food. That food must be bad. No, the food wasn't bad. You didn't break it down properly. And then it ended up going into the garbage can. Now it's affecting your lymphatic system and creating an immune event, a hypersensitivity event. And it can also go into the brain lymph and lymphatic systems, which dump 3 pounds of trash out of your head every year while you sleep at night. And that can cause the brain grain effect, which is exactly what he was talking about. But that's because an overwhelming amount of the gluten was getting into the lymphatic system, creating a global lymphatic congestive issue. And there are enzymes in your lymphatic system called DPP4, which are specifically engineered to break down wheat, with the idea that wheat is not supposed to be completely broken down in your stomach. Some of it's supposed to go all the way to your large intestine and create short-chain fatty acids and butyric acids and try to support a healthy microbiome. But when you eat a lot of super highly processed wheat and you have a broken, which the processed food and the pesticides kill the bacteria in your mouth and digestion that actually make the enzymes for you to digest the wheat properly and the glyphosate properly and the mercury properly, then you don't have the ability to break it down. So now those proteins and fats will not be broken down completely. They'll go into your intestinal tract, too big to get in your blood. They go into the garbage can. They go into your lymph. They give you extra weight. They give you brain fog. They give you rashes. They give you a food coma. You feel tired after the meal. All these things happen not because the actual food is toxic, is that the foods that are toxic, pesticides, insecticides, have broken down our digestive system in such a way, and also all the processed food, we can get into why that breaks your digestion down as well. But all these things have broken down our digestion. So now we're blaming the food, and nobody's talking about fixing the actual digestion yourself. And that's why I wrote Eat Wheat, because I felt everybody was just treating the symptoms, which is what Western medicine has been doing forever. And they're still doing it now, and they're taking people down a dramatically wrong road. Even the biohackers who are anti-grain, anti all these foods, can't eat kale, can't eat, grains, they're really bad for you. If they, and when you listen to them, they'll say, well, if I eat grains or if I eat kale, I feel terrible. I'm going, wait a minute. When I was 18, and when most folks were 18, you could eat anything you wanted. And now when you're 40 and 50 and 60, you have trouble? So what happened? Do we have to blame it on the food, or can we actually look and dissect your digestion and fix that with herbs and foods and spices to reboot strength and give you a robust digestion into the second half of your life or your whole life?
Absolutely. And this is fascinating about the lymphatic system, which is essentially our immune system. And now we have this global lymphatic congestion. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about the research that connects, you touched on it there, wheat and the brain's lymphatic system.
Yeah. It was, I think, about 15 to 17 years ago, I'm forgetting now, when they discovered the brain lymph and lymphatic system. And before that, the brain lymph, anybody who said there was lymphs in the brain was considered a total quack. But there was just no science or no anatomy to show that there was any lymphatics in the brain whatsoever, and that the brain was 100% sterile. And the lungs were 100% sterile. This is what was known forever and ever. Now we know that there's a microbiome in your lungs, there's a microbiome in your brain, and it is not sterile, and there's lymphs in your brain. And Ayurveda talked about lymphs in the brain thousands and thousands of years ago, which is why I love writing about ancient wisdom and modern science, because, if you have something that's been around for 1,000 years or thousands of years even in Ayurveda, and it's still in practice today. I mean, the world, the All Indian Ayurvedic Congress is the largest medical organization in the world to this day and has been for decades. So, which means that this 5,000-year-old science is still alive and well today, used by so many people. And if you have that ancient time-tested wisdom and you have modern science to back it up, which is what I write about, I feel like that's something we should look at. We should at least say, wait a minute. Modern science, I mean, one day coffee is good, one day is coffee bad, soy is good, soy is bad, milk's good, milk's bad, meat's good, milk's bad. I mean, nobody knows really for sure. And I can give you a study on both sides of every one of those topics. If I wanted to prove whatever I wanted to prove, I could kind of find a study to back it up. It's so unreliable if you just look at Western science alone. But if you look at time-tested wisdom and modern science, I feel like that's something, it doesn't mean that's 100%. But it means that it's something we should, I think, at least look at. And I think that's the key missing piece, is that they knew thousands of years ago that there were lymphs in the brain. And they understood, and they called it tarpika. And tarpika means to clean out the brain, to detoxify, and to record old mental and emotional traumas. So we have a species survival thing that happens inside of us, where if you went into a cave when you were 10 and a bear chased you out and almost took your life, you could be 99 and you would know where that cave was and you would know not to go near it. It's a species survival memory. Well, it turns out that we hold on to a lot more species survival stuff than we need to. And many times they really change behavior, and we create patterns of behavior based on those stressors. They make us oftentimes do the same dumb stuff again and again in our lives. And I think most of us would agree that it's this crazy mind of ours, the stress that we incur mentally and emotionally, that does most of the damage. It ruins our life. We can't sleep. We get anxious. We get worried. And it has a direct, gut-brain-gut relationship where it affects your digestion, which now I can't eat X, Y, and Z, so therefore it must be the food. And that affects every physiological function in our body. And depending how you're genetically encoded to break down because of all that stress, you're gonna. So Ayurveda's like, well, we can fix that. We can actually help to unravel those old mental and emotional patterns that we store in the white matter of our brain. So here I kind of dive a little bit away from the science and into the Ayurveda. So Ayurveda said that we feel the stress in our heart. It's called sadhaka. Your heart feels it. And that stress is carried to your brain through an aspect of vata, which is your nervous system, called prana. And that prana carries that stress to a part of your brain called tarpika, which is to record. And it's like it actually records this stress in the waxy myelin sheaths, the white matter of your brain. It's like etching it into the wax and saying, don't go into that cave ever again. And we remember that. And then we figure out how to create patterns of behavior that make sure we never go into that cave again. So I never become vulnerable. I never let who I truly am out. I want everybody to love me and like me and appreciate me. So all my happiness comes from the outside. Like, God forbid, I let who I really am out. They might not like me. I could be devastated. Therefore, that old trauma, how we grew up in our life, wasn't like a cave and a bear. It might have been our childhood upbringing that was, for all of us, there's always impressions, right? So Ayurveda was like, these impressions are responsible, according to Western science. We're responsible for 95% of the things that we think and say and do as adults. And there's many studies to back that up. So it's those early impressions when we're really, really young that make us do all this crazy stuff when we're older. And that's like 95% of what we're thinking and saying and doing. That doesn't make any sense. Like, how can that be? And everybody's like, well, that's how it really is, because we are kind of in this sort of very spongy-like, hypnotic, impression-based state when we're young. And those impressions create behaviors, and those behaviors create what we think and do as we get older. And that, they said, was unconscious. We're unconscious beings. We're walking around. 95% of the stuff we're thinking and saying and done and doing came from when we were like 5. And before. That makes no sense. So like, we can do better. We can become conscious, right? And traditional cultures had what were called rites of passage, where you stop needing to be loved and approved of and appreciated by mom and dad, and you start giving the love and approval and appreciation to everybody else. You start being the sun as opposed to needing the sunlight to grow. Mm-hmm. But we don't have that anymore in our culture.
Yeah.
Everybody just gets more and more addicted to being appreciated and approved of and satisfied and stimulated by the outside world. So we actually never grow up and never become conscious. Mm. So Ayurveda had tools to become conscious: yoga, breathing, meditation, and they had specific tools, as you ask, about the brain, lymph, and lymphatic systems. And in one of those, a couple of them are really simple. I mean, there's good studies to show. So you should know that in your brain, right along like a mohawk haircut, across the top of your head, there's what's called the sagittal sinus. And in there is the main vessels called the arachnoid space, which is where the brain lymphatics drain. And gosh, there's so much to say here. And that lymph in the brain is pumped by your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is the number one pump of your body's lymphatic system. Now, nobody tells us that. That's just kind of buried in the Western journals. And one recent study showed that 91% of athletes did not have a diaphragm relaxing and contracting fully, which means we don't have a diaphragmatic lymphatic pump. And that lymphatic pump is directly responsible for the extra weight around your belly. And that diaphragmatic lymphatic pump is pumping cerebrospinal fluid up into your brain and washing your brain. This tarpa kapha is a brain washing fluid, and it's washing the brain and cleaning that brain out. But if you have a diaphragm that's not working, as we sit way much more than we ever did before, and we don't move as much as we did historically, that pump becomes sort of, it's very definitely as we age, we start to breathe more shallow, we start opening our mouth, we start having trouble breathing as we age, our VO2 max starts to get compromised. All these things are reversible with just a few minutes of breathing per day. I was coming out of a restaurant about a year ago, and there was a couple of elderly folks coming out of the restaurant in their 80s and 90s, frail, with their mouths wide open, really struggling just breathing-wise to get out of the restaurant. I was opening the door for them, and I was like, golly, if only they knew that 5 minutes of breathing per day, and I can teach you that right now, 5 minutes of breathing per day would actually reverse the cognitive decline that's going on in their body. It can reverse, according to the studies, the heartburn, GERD, reflux, and indigestion. Studies show that breathing just 3 minutes a day can actually reverse their blood pressure or lower their blood pressure better than as good as the Western medical drugs. Nobody told them that just breathing will actually pump the trash out of their brain and give them clarity and energy and vitality. It'll actually reverse their digestive issues. It'll actually get rid of the extra weight around their belly, because the diaphragm is the pump for all that stuff around your intestinal tract. So when we start piecing this together, we have pranayama, breathing techniques, which are designed to pump the lymphatic system. And then in the brain, there is the lymphatic system. And there are studies show that if you actually just take your fingers and give yourself a head massage and move the scalp on your skull and loosen it all up, that head massage will actually increase your brain lymphatic drainage. I don't know if you've ever been to India before or ever got a haircut in India before, but
I haven't got a haircut, but have been.
Oh my God, you have to get a haircut in India. It's one of the things you have to do when you go to India. Now, so what they do is they massage your head with such vigor that you've never experienced anything like it. It's like one of the 4 or 5 wonders of the world. You have to get a haircut in India. And that's the tradition, is to give this massive ear, head, face massage. It's just crazy. Now, I got probably 1 or 2 many haircuts there in India with no hair. I'm bald, right? But the idea is that studies show that when you do that head massage, it increases the brain lymphatic drainage inside your skull. Right?
Wow.
So everyone can start increasing brain lymphatic drainage to support their cognitive function. And here, I'll give you a list of the studies since the last 17 years when they finally discovered the lymphatic systems in the brain. They have now figured out that it's causing a lot of concerns, including anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, inflammation, infection, and even poor sleep and autoimmune concerns, which means that the master computer, which is your brain, can't take its trash out. It's not going to know how many fire trucks to send to the immune event on Main Street, somewhere in your body. So it sends 1, which is under, responsive immune, response, or it sends 100, which is an overzealous immune response, which means that we're creating an autoimmune effect where the body's attacking itself. So they've linked this alteration of the brain, lymph, and lymphatic systems to all these major concerns, including long-haul COVID. Some of the first research that came out after COVID was that the long-haul COVID was caused by the brain, lymph, and lymphatic systems were not detoxifying. And it took months and months and months for the body to finally recover from that. And you can even make the case that if your diaphragm isn't working right, which is almost every one of us, which has a specific effect on your digestive strength and a specific effect on your immune system, and therefore making us more vulnerable to an immune event. And we have research to show that it's the brain lymphatic system gets congested, which is obviously the diaphragm's pumping all that trash out. So if you can't breathe during a respiratory event like COVID, which happened, you're not pumping that trash out of your head. So it does make perfect sense that that long-haul COVID would be related to congestion of the brain, lymph, and lymphatic systems, right?
Absolutely.
And that if we had really good digestion, and we were able to break down the wheat, the dairy, the nuts, the seeds, the grains, legumes, nightshades, oxalates, all that stuff, and the environmental pollutants, we had the ability to break all that down. We would have the ability to break down and destroy viruses in our stomach, which is how we're designed to function. Right? If you don't have good stomach acid, which is what that pool of acid in your stomach is for, is to kill and eradicate all these pathogens that come in. It's your first line of defense. But if you can't break down the protein in wheat or the protein in dairy or the protein anti-nutrients on beans or many other foods, then you're not going to have a stomach acid that's going to be preventative against these pathogens that we're being exposed to all the time. So they're going to enter into your intestinal tract like an open door and find their way and do some horizontal transfer of genetic material, figure out a way to infiltrate your gut lining and infect you. And is there a relationship between our broken down digestive systems and this lousy response to COVID that we've had on this planet? I think the science says we should for sure look at that.
Yeah.
I'm not making a statement that it's because people can't eat wheat, therefore COVID was bad. But there's direct relationships when you connect the dots, which Western medicine doesn't do, and Ayurveda does. It recognizes that your diaphragm is linked to brain lymphatic detoxification. It's directly linked to digestive strength, directly linked to lymphatic flow. And you put those together, you're going to have a compromised immune response.
Absolutely. And so, as you say, Ayurveda is a holistic systems approach. So if we're looking at helping people to heal their relationship with food, it's a matter of looking at not only their agni, their digestive fire, the strength of that, but also breathing pranayama practices as well. So it has to be a holistic approach, right, to healing the body.
True. I think rebooting digestive strength, and I've written so many articles about, we have something called the Digestive Health Quiz where people can go through and just take the quiz and ask specific questions about their stomach. about their liver, about their gallbladder, about their pancreas, about their intestines, about their lymph, and find out which part of their digestion is broken, and then give recommendations of how to fix that, so folks can kind of know, like, okay, and that was what my Eat Wheat book was really about, about giving the people that troubleshooting guide. I wasn't vested in everybody eating wheat, but I was vested in people realizing that wheat was not, it was more of a canary in the coal mine than anything else. And we're not looking at the canary, we're looking at, something completely different. And we're getting misled by saying, oh, well, just take the canary out of the coal mine or something crazy. It makes no sense what we're doing. We're not fixing the real problem, and people are paying a bigger price than we think because we're just kicking the can down the road.
And let's talk about some of those pranayama practices. You mentioned there you could share some breathing exercise with us, because that's one of the primary ways, right, of stimulating the lymphatic drainage of the brain.
Yeah. So there's two that I want to share with you, and I know this is just audio, so people can kind of follow me along. I'll make it really simple. I also have an article on my website at lifespa.com called The Best Diaphragmatic Breathing Exercises, where you can actually get the videos and watch them. So that's Great. There for you. And it's all free. Everything on lifespa.com is free. There's 3 videos in that article. And the first video is doing what's called Durga Pranayama, which is super simple for most people. It's just filling your belly as you breathe in through your nose, and then fill your chest as you continue breathing in through your nose, and then your upper chest as you continue breathing in through your nose. So it's a 3-part breath. Fill your belly, and then as you continue to inhale, fill your chest, and as you continue to inhale, fill your upper chest. It's nice and slow, and you do kind of isolate those 3 parts. The second video is putting this to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask folks to take their hands, arms, and reach over their head as high as they can reach. Now, as my arms are stretching up, my rib cage is going up. But I'm going to ask you to breathe, and when that happens, my diaphragm is going to go down to suck the air in, and my rib cage is going up because I'm reaching for the sky as high as I can. So this time I'm going to actually reach for the sky as high as I can. I'm going to fill always through the nose, my belly first. All the way. Then my chest. And my upper chest. And reach, and out. It's nice and slow. You always want to start out slow. Again, arms go up, belly first. All the way in with your belly, all the way in with your chest. Continuous breath. Then all the way reach for the sky. And as you reach in, you'll feel underneath your rib cage kind of a pull. And that's your diaphragm going down, your rib cage going up. And these are called maximum inspiratory breathing techniques in Western medicine, and they've been shown to reverse your heartburn, GERD, reflux, and indigestion. You go to the doctor, you have heartburn, they don't tell you to breathe, they give you a pill, right? But there's 15 studies in their own medical journals say this will reverse your heartburn, GERD, and reflux, lower your blood pressure, pump the lymph out of your belly. Brain lymphatic, all this stuff's happening because our rib cage has a job in life, which is to squeeze all the air out. And that means contract your rib cage, get tighter. And if you don't have a diaphragm that's working well, over time, the diaphragm will weaken, the rib cage will become tighter, it'll kind of win this war, and you'll become a very shallow, inefficient breather. So that's why we have to get, this is what I call sort of calisthenics for the diaphragm. So this one you would do 10 straight up, reach, in, and you go 10 to the side. In, lateral bend to the side, and you do 10 that way, and then 10 to both sides. And then the third video is doing that same breath, belly, chest, upper chest, doing some very simple yoga postures like a sphinx or a child's pose or a bridge or a gentle twist while you're breathing, belly, chest, upper chest, to really create an elasticity between your diaphragm and break up the scar tissue between your diaphragm and your rib cage. Critically important. And I call this calisthenics for your diaphragm and your rib cage. This is not how I want you to breathe, is belly, chest, upper chest. It's sort of to get this whole thing, get the rusty gate moving for the first time in a long time. The second article I'll talk about, which is more aligned with the ways I want you to breathe, is called lateral breathing, where instead of breathing up, belly, chest, upper chest, if you watch your dog or your baby or your horse breathe, you'll notice that their belly goes out to the side. So in this breathing technique, we're not going to move our chest. And this one you can do lying in bed. One of my favorite exercises. And this is do just 5 minutes a day. Like I talked about the elderly folks, this is the 5 minute a day breathing technique after you do some calisthenics to get the thing opened up. So you actually breathe into your nose and just fill your belly a little bit. Don't move your chest, and then try to fill the air. Inhale as you push the rib cage out to the side. And feel your rib cage laterally pushed out, even into your back muscles, but don't let the air go up into your chest. Then as you breathe out, narrow your rib cage and fully contract your abdomen as you squeeze all the air out. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. And then as you breathe in, belly only, then rib cage goes low and wide. Push the air out to the side. You can feel the rib cage, the pressure in the lower rib cage as you breathe in more and more. You can even sip little bits of sips of air in to get the rib cage to really push out, push out, push out. And as you narrow the rib cage and contract your abdomen during the exhale, what's happening is the diaphragm, as you fully exhale, is parachuting up under the rib cage, pushing dead air space, which is toxic air, out of your lungs, allowing you to have way more kind of perfusion of the lower lobes of your lungs with the next inhalation. And if the rib cage is tight and become cage-like, you don't have the lateral excursion of the rib to make room for the diaphragm to fully parachute and relax up under the rib cage. And therefore, it never fully relaxes. And therefore, it never fully contracts. And therefore, we slowly but surely become compromised breather. And the rib cage just does what it does. It gets tighter, 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 because that's its job in life. And that's where the problem lives. So those two articles, there's videos there to kind of guide you through that, would be a great way to kind of just put this thing behind you. And then you can add very specific pranayama techniques for more spiritual and kind of self, awareness, enhancement benefits, which is, taking it to the next level. But this is just like 101, get this rib cage doing what it was designed to do.
So you're really training yourself to use the full capacity of your lungs and increase that flexibility of the rib cage as well at the same time.
Exactly.
And I have to ask, because I think you were the first people I've heard say this, and with your sports background, is nose breathing, because that's an important part here as well, right? You alluded to it there when you're talking about the elderly breathing through their mouth, and how breathing through your nose is a very important part of the process as well.
Yeah. And this, when I was back in 1986, when I went to India, I started, learning more about pranayama and the difference between nose breathing and mouth breathing. I did some research there in India, and then when I came back, we actually started doing studies and published studies on the difference between nose breathing and mouth breathing in my book, Body, Mind, Sport, which was my first book. And we actually showed that when people breathe through their mouth during exercise, their brain waves goes into a fight or flight state, and they go into a stress state. And the perception of the exertion is a 10 out of 10. And their mouth breathing was 48 breaths per minute. And we had the same group of high school athletes came back the next day, did nose breathing exercise, same vigorous workout. And we measured their brain waves, and their brain waves went into a meditative calm. Their fight or flight nervous system dialed down, and their parasympathetic rest rejuvenation nervous system increased during vigorous exercise. Their brain went into a meditative calm during vigorous exercise. And I was sort of after the runner's high, the zone, my best races, my easiest race experience, and we proved that. Their perception of the exertion, instead of 10 out of 10 with the mouth open, was a 4 out of 10. Their breaths per minute, instead of 48 breaths per minute, were 14 breaths per minute for the same workout. And the brain waves were not only in alpha, which is meditative, they were coherent. So the whole brain started doing the same coherent thing, which is a measure of a higher functioning brain. So just imagine running as fast as you can, but your brain responding to that stress as a meditation. So of course, walking and breathing and learning how to be a nose breather during exercise is critical. But really the goal is to realize that the idea here is to take it off the mat. In other words, I can do yoga, breathing, and meditate and create a calm in that space. I can even do it when I go for a run with nose breathing. But what about when I'm driving my car in traffic and dealing with this or that? How can I take it off the mat? And that's really what nose breathing is about, is to learn how to create a neurological calm, a brainwave coherent alpha, non-sympathetic fight or flight state. And I call it the eye of the storm. And how do we create that internal experience of composure and calm that supports the winds of the storm? And slowly build the power and a bigger and larger eye of your storm. And you can slowly learn how to build the winds around your storm, but you hail from that place of composure and calm. And you don't let yourself flip out into the winds of the storm where it's dangerous. And now I'm living the stress, coming home from work exhausted. I feel depleted at the end of every week, and I'm living to just somehow recover from this life that we have, which is so antithetical to nature. The geese, I don't know if you have geese in France or not, but we have Canadian geese here, and they're like flying all the time in all different directions. I don't think they even know where they're going anymore, but they definitely aren't like huffing and puffing when they come back and go, oh my God, what a day,
Yeah.
The deer are just chilling. And we have that ability to live that experience of composure and calm. And the bigger the eye of your storm, the more productive you can be in your life, which is not about, just staying around and just meditate and don't do anything stressful. No, it's the bigger the eye, the more productive and beneficial to the world we can be. Yeah. And that's the beauty of, I think, the research that I did years ago, was that we created a neurological calm in the midst of dynamic physical activity. And the goal is to do it there, but also that's a training ground for the rest of your life.
Beautiful. Yeah, building up that resilience. And you hear that animals who breathe less live longer, for your longevity as well. And your digestive health, as you said, because when you're exerting yourself too much, which is a tendency in the West, right? We think harder is better, and I'm not really working out until I'm breathing out my mouth very hard. But in that state of going into the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, then all the blood is going away from your digestion. So you have this cycle again of your digestion being disrupted by this as well, and creating stress in the digestive system.
Really, it's like your body's being told that you're being chased by a bear, get up a tree, save your life, and you're not allowed to order pizza right now. You're not allowed to digest or think about eating food. Literally, neurologically, your body's saying, don't digest your food. So that's a bad look when we're trying to actually metabolize our requirements for nutrition, right?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. We really do. And that's why that old saying that says, if you eat standing up, death looks over your shoulder, which means that we really do need to take time to relax and enjoy our food and make that experience something a little bit more focused than, sitting in front of the TV watching the news or whatever crazy thing's happening.
Yes, exactly. And so I do want to go back to talking about food as well. And I'd like to talk about how, for people who want to reintroduce wheat into their diet, they're listening to you speaking here and they're like, well, I know I'm not celiac and I haven't been diagnosed with any gluten sensitivities, so maybe I should try this. What are the best ways for them to do that safely and mindfully? And of course, take into consideration of what they're eating too, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, there's a handful of simple things. One, the breathing that we just talked about will be very helpful. And number two, another thing is that stress causes us not to make the stomach acid that we need. And if you over time don't make the stomach acid, your stomach is not going to send a message to your liver to make the right amount of bile to emulsify the fat or the digestive enzymes. So it all starts, number one, in your stomach. So we have to start to fire that up. And we have to also start to decongest your liver, because the processed food, which are predominantly preserved, and they can stay on the shelf forever and never go bad because of the highly processed seed oils. This is what the seed oils really do. And that's why when you put, these oils in bread, they never go bad. The bread never gets hard. So here in America, back in the day when I grew up, there were bakers on every little village, and the bread would go bad in a day and they'd sell it for like half the price. And now the bread never goes bad, ever. I mean, You could have a bread that's a year old and it's still squishy. And that's because the bugs on the counter, which are there, have no interest in eating that bread, because the oils, they can't consume it. Even though the microbes consume fat, that's what they eat. But they won't eat those highly processed oils. They don't recognize them. So when you eat that bread, that has the oils in it that the bugs on the counter won't eat. The bugs in your gut won't eat it either. So where does all the oil that your bugs who normally eat oil won't eat? It goes right to your liver and gallbladder, and it creates what's called bile sludge. And bile is really important. Your liver bile is probably the most important piece of the puzzle because your liver bile makes you poop, helps you regulate your bowel movements. Your liver bile is like a Pac-Man gobbling up fats and toxins in your liver and Pac-Manning and gobbling up toxins in your intestinal tract, cleaning your intestinal tract out. Bile is also a natural buffer for your stomach acid. So if you don't have good bile flow because of all the processed food, seed oils and things like that, preservatives, then your liver eats your stomach eats a ham sandwich, and now the stomach goes, okay, wow, I got all this fat in the ham, I got all this gluten in the bread, I'm going to need a bunch of acid to break down the gluten in the bread, and I'm going to need a bunch of bile to buffer that acid because the bile is a buffer for your stomach acid. And it's going to need a bunch of bile to emulsify the fat in the ham. So the stomach sends a message to your liver and says, I need X amount of bile. And your liver goes, whoa, boy, we're busy down here. I don't know if I can pull that off right now. And the stomach says, it's all right. I'll just hold on to the ham sandwich and all the acid and everything till you guys turn the green light on and I'll empty my contents. And while it's just sitting in your stomach, it's called gastroparesis. And Ayurveda, we call it udvarta, upward moving digestion, where the food sits in there and it starts to go up, make you burp, starts to ferment, give you a kind of an upper high food belly, or food coma where everything feels stuck right there. It pushes up against your diaphragm, affects how you breathe. And next thing you know, your stomach says, you know what? I can't continue to hold on to all this acid. I'm going to have to stop making the acid. This is just too much. I'm going to burn a hole through something. And the stomach turns off the acid. And because you turned off the bile. So now your ability to make acid and your ability to make bile have both been dialed down. So which means that your digestive strength, detoxify strength is weakened. So what do you do about that? Simple things, couple of things you can do straight away. Is a half hour before the meal or an hour before the meal, somewhere in that range between a half hour and an hour, drink a big glass of water. And studies show that will actually prehydrate the stomach lining and actually give you more water to hydrate the bicarbonate layer, which is your buffering system in your stomach. So if your stomach has that buffering layer, it's going to be more willing to make more acid. And the studies show that that will actually help you significantly. And actually, studies show it help people lose weight. The second thing is spices. I use a formula called Gentle Digest, which has got 5 spices: ginger, cumin, coriander, fennel, and cardamom. So when you put those 5 spices and you look at them individually, they will amp up each aspect of your upper digestive strength: stomach acid, bile flow, pancreatic, duodenal enzymes. But when you put them all together, you start getting this overall reset of your stomach acid. And you can take it in a capsule, you can make your own formulas, equal parts, and sprinkle it on your food when you cook or put it on your salad. But you have to spice your food to kind of turn that digestive strength back on. Another thing I really like is taking what are called cholagogues. Cholagogues are things that decongest your liver and your bile, get rid of the bile sludge. And one of my favorite drinks is called ABC juice. And I have an article about the science on that. And it's apple, beets, and celery. And if you can blend it up, make a juice out of it. You can put them in a pot and steam them, and then blend it and make a warm soup. You can have an apple for breakfast and beets for lunch and celery for dinner. But those foods will decongest the liver and the gallbladder, and more bile, more poop, more bile, more stomach acid, more bile, more emulsifying of the bad fats and delivery of the good fats. It's a critical piece of the puzzle that nobody's talking about, these super simple things that folks can do to begin to reset that. And of course, we have herbs and formulas for more specific ways to kind of reboot the digestive strength. But those are some super simple things that everybody can start doing.
Fantastic.
And also, I should say, sit down, take time, and relax, of course, when you eat your food.
Yeah, take a few breaths before you eat and try not to multitask, right, while eating, and definitely not listen to the news while eating. That will definitely upset your stomach. And when you talk about seed oils, there's been a big debate about seed oils. Now, we don't have to dive too deep into this as we come to the end of this recording, but I do just want to clarify, of course, you're talking about processed, refined seed oils rather than cold pressed or expeller pressed seed oils.
I think the best way to get seed oils is eating seeds, because the seeds provide they capture the oil in the seed, and that's what makes the seed grow. And when you crack the seed and you light, one photon of light will actually create that oil to go rancid. Back in the old days, when they would make oils for cooking, they would deliver the oil. They would press it in the night, in the dark of the night, and they would put it in very dark amber bottles, and they would deliver it with the milk at 4 a.m. before the sun arrives, and would go into a milk box. And that's how oils were actually historically delivered. And then they figured out a way to boil, bleach, deodorize them, and actually destroy these seed oils. So if you can get the oils that way, or I prefer to get those seed oils in nuts. And I love the idea of eating recognizable food in season. And that means, this time of the year, as we are in the winter or getting out of winter, the more nuts and seeds and higher protein and higher fiber and higher fat foods are kind of what should be consumed this time of the year. It's a low carbohydrate time. If you think about trying to get pasta or pizza out of the ground right now, good luck. It's not going to happen. That doesn't happen until the fall. And the bugs in your gut are changing from season to season to season. The bugs in the soil and on the foods are changing from season to season. So we are seasonal circadian beings. And if you eat more fat and fiber in the springtime, that'll force your body to burn fat as fuel. And there's bugs in your gut that proliferate in the hunter-gatherer tribes in the spring called actinobacteria, which are for fat and fiber. And then as the summer kicks in and we get more carbohydrates, the grains start to come in, the fruits start to come in, we change the gut microbiome to be more predominantly what are called bacteroidetes, which help deliver sugar as a source of fuel. So sugar was not the source of fuel year-round. We changed the fuel supply from fat in the spring, more ketogenic style of eating, to a carbohydrate diet in the fall. And that's literally based on the bugs that change in the soil, on our food, in our gut from season to season. That's why I wrote my second book called The 3-Season Diet, which is all about eating the 3 harvests of nature: spring harvest, summer harvest, and a fall harvest for winter eating. And, you could print out our grocery list right here, which is a spring grocery list. Right. Literally, it's free. Circle the foods on there that you like and give yourself permission to eat more of those foods that are in season. So you're getting medicinal dosage of the foods that are in season for you at this time of the year. And in the spring, change it to the summer, into the winter, and you have 3 grocery lists that you kind of key on during the year. It makes eating really simple.
Yes, I always think of that story you tell about the deer. And when they eat certain foods out of season, that their stomach is affected.
Yeah, that was I think it was called a book called The Forest Unseen. And the guy took a square meter of the earth and watched whatever happened to it for like a whole year or 2 or 3 or something like that. And a deer came on and started eating the bark. And he said that if they were to eat the bark out of season, it would create such a level of indigestion that it would kill the deer. But if they ate that in season, it was fine. So from our animal perspective and our our evolutionary perspective, eating in season mattered because it gave you the bugs in the winter for immunity when we need that the most. The bugs to decongest you in the spring from allergies, which we also really need. And the bugs to dissipate heat in the summer, because summer is very hot. So nature really had a plan, and the harvest is always giving us the antidote to the extreme of each season. That's why nuts and seeds squirrels eat in the winter, which are oily and heavy. They antidote the dryness of winter. And the root vegetables of spring help decongest you in the spring, and the fruits and vegetables help keep the heat from being excessive in the summer. It's super, super simple. And all you got to do is eat more. You don't have to eat only seasonal food. Just get more of them in your diet. So you get those right bugs in a organic, way where those foods are loaded with the right bugs for that season. You can't eat, sprayed foods because they don't have the right bugs on them. They're gone.
Right, right. So checking out your local farmers market, and the food is seasonal, it's abundant, therefore it'll be cheaper, and it's a great way to support those local farmers who are doing the good work and finding out what they're putting on the crops. Have a conversation with them. But Dr. John, it really is, about getting back to the intelligence of nature. And at the start of this episode today, you talked about how Ayurveda stood the test of time. And it stood the test of time because it's literally just about our connection with nature and being aware of the seasons and being aware of our connection with the circadian rhythm and so on. And that's what it's really all about, right? Is really that connection back to nature, which we need now more than ever, which is why we're all really passionate about Ayurveda, because it's so logical in that sense.
Yeah, you said it perfectly well, Colette. That's exactly what it's about. And it's not on a level of intelligence that we don't have. We crave, warmer foods in the winter. We crave fruits in the summer. We have this natural inclination to be circadian beings, but we also have this pull to take us away from that level of intelligence. And I think that's what Ayurveda is really about, is reminding us that our body already really knows what to do, and we just have to follow the rules.
Yeah, and it really is that simplicity of following nature's lead. Dr. John, as we finish up here, I could talk to you forever, but we have to finish the recording. But as we finish up, is there anything else that you wanted to share today? And of course, I want you to share where people can find out more about your work, your huge resource library, which I go into all the time. But please share if there's anything else you want to share on this topic that we haven't covered.
Well, there is one more thing, and I think that you wanted to talk a lot about the brain lymphatic system, which is kind of a really cool thing that most people don't know about. But Ayurveda did talk about a very specific therapy for that, and it's called Nasya. It's one of the 5 major cleansing techniques in Ayurveda, where you actually sniff a medicated oil up your nose into your sagittal sinus. And I wrote an article about that called Nasya. It's called SAN, Nasya, Nasya. If you type that in, you'll get a whole article of how to do that at home. And I don't know if we have like 2 minutes. I can.
Oh yeah, please, absolutely, I love it. Yeah.
So when I administered Panchakarma Ayurvedic therapies for 26 years, it became really clear to me over the years that what Ayurveda Panchakarma was really about was transformation, freeing us from old mental patterns of behavior. So I would always give this Nasya therapy, very significantly during the Panchakarma. And I found that when you cleaned out the brain lymphatic system, I would see major emotional transformation. So I had one patient, she came in with a goiter in her neck, a swollen thyroid. And she had hyperthyroidism, really, really high levels. Her doctor wanted to radiate her thyroid. She didn't want to do that. She came to see me, and we gave her Panchakarma, and I gave her 3 or 4 of these Nasya therapies, which are elaborate treatment of vigorous head massage, a eucalyptus steam, hot water bottles to vasodilate the head as much as possible, and then a series of sniffing medicated oils and ginger with oils and different things in your head. And the article tells you step by step how to do it at home for yourself, and there's a video there as well. After her 3rd treatment, she said, I was writing in my journal, and I had this epiphany where I was abused when I was 14 years old. And she said, I had completely blocked that out of my mind. I haven't thought about that in decades. And she said, what was really strange about this epiphany was that I wasn't so affected by the sexual event itself. I was completely blown away by my childhood before, a happy-go-lucky young little girl. And then this event happened, and then I became this hyper-vigilant, 90-hour-a-week corporate executive perfectionist with a color-coded closet and everything. If anybody came to my house, I'm cleaning and scrubbing for 3 hours, making it perfect nail, perfect car, perfect everything. That was her survival. And she said, I looked at my life before the event, I looked at my life after the event, and she said, I realized that, you know what? That event wasn't great, but it wasn't worth 25 years of my life, because she had burned out her adrenals. She had blood sugar issues, and her thyroid was exploding. She said, I was able to just drop it and let it go. And within a week, this true story, her thyroid goiter was gone. You couldn't see it. Her numbers came down 200 points during that week. Within the next 6 months, her thyroid 100% normalized, 100%. She never had the radiation. I saw her at a Christmas party in Denver, 5-6 years later. She came running up to me with 2 little girls that she desperately wanted me to meet, that she said wouldn't have been here. There were 2 little girls she had if it wasn't for her getting her this underlying stress, like we talked about, this etched in survival stress that made her become a survival fight or flight perfectionist. And then she realized that that she was able to let that go.
Wow.
And that's the beauty of that. And that's why when I closed my Pancha Karma Center in 2013, the first article I wrote was how folks can do this at home. It's elaborate. It's aggressive. I would suggest reading it, look at it, spend some time thinking about it, because it is a treatment that you have to get good at doing, but it is there for folks. And it is a powerful way to detoxify the brain, lymph, and lymphatic system. And to my knowledge, other than prana and breathing, there's no other way to directly get in there and make that happen. And I've seen it clinically be, the thing that I leaned on so effectively with my patients, because that was the thing that moved the needle for them, that really got them to change those old patterns. So that's something that people can do at home, and it costs them nothing.
Wow. And so that's the nausea therapy using medicated oils. Yeah.
Got to be done correctly. You can't just sniff a little oil up your nose for dry sinuses. That's not what nausea was for. Nausea was deep cleaning out this brain, lymph, and lymphatic system. So it's a little more elaborate than that. But yeah, that's the treatment.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that story. That's amazing and wonderful to hear those real life stories. Amazing. Well, we have covered so much today. You've given lots of tips for the listeners. And if you could tell the listeners now, we mentioned lifespa.com, where they can go to find out more about your work and all the resources there.
Yeah. So at lifespa.com, we put out a newsletter 3 times a week, all about all the articles I write about ancient wisdom and modern science. So that's all for free. People can sign up for that. And of course, there at lifespa.com, we have an Ayurvedic store. All of our organic herbs and books and tapes and knowledge are there as well. And then I'm on all the social channels, so lots of ways to learn more about how to kind of troubleshoot your concerns. We have over 1,500 articles about pretty much every type of health concern, and all that stuff's for free. Just type in your health concern and see if we can help you out.
And what I love about your work is all evidence-based science, which is amazing, taking everything, all your education, your experience in life, and putting them into all those free resources there. And we have a coupon for the listeners. So it's a $10 coupon that they can use towards a $50 or more one-time purchase. And the code is elements10. I'll put all those links in the show notes. So please check out lifespa.com. You won't be disappointed. You'll be there for hours and hours, days and days, going through this beautiful wealth of wisdom from Dr. John. And Dr. John, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's truly an honor for me to get to chat with you today. I have watched and benefited from your work for many, many years.
Colette, thank you so much. And thanks for what you're doing. It's really, you do a wonderful job. Thanks so much.
Much appreciated. Take care. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. John. And don't forget that $10 coupon. Check out the links in the show notes for that, as well as getting over to lifespa.com. If you want support on your Ayurvedic journey, please check out my online services via the link in the show notes, or just visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. If you think this episode will be helpful to family or friends, please share it with them so we can spread this wisdom. And if you haven't already followed or subscribed to the podcast, please do so, and the new episodes will automatically download for you. Don't forget to join me on social media. My new Instagram page is Elements of Ayurveda Podcast, and on Facebook, it's under Elements Healing and Wellbeing. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.